for the Weekly Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest have undertaken an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and film festivals and directors and all this other stuff that I really know nothing about because they made this really long list of things that they want to talk about and I can't even read through all of them, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Weekly Planet podcast, your weekly dose of all things movies, TV, books, and anything else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly, editor-in-chief of DailyPlanetFilms.com, and I'm joined as always by my co-host and co-editor, Matt Freeman. Matt, we did it. We made a podcast.
We did, or are, right now, live.
Well, I mean, it's not live. I mean, I'm saying this live, but there's people out there listening to a recording of us.
Well, yeah, it's probably like Monday morning and they're driving to work. That must suck.
30 seconds in and we've already insulted our audience. We're doing good. All right, well, everyone out there, your day's about to get a lot better because we've got a real special one for you guys this week. This is our inaugural episode. I don't think I said that word right, but that's okay. Of The Planet. And we're going to take on the one, the only, Christopher Nolan. Is he a brilliant visionary director or an overindulgent and overrated chump? We will find out today.
Or we'll argue for an hour and accomplish something.
Or that. But first, before we get started, I've got to introduce our special guest. Hailing all the way from the greatest of Britons, Daily Planet contributor, my old friend, and absolute lover of the Dark Knight trilogy, Michael Grubb.
Well, hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on this podcast today.
How's it going, Michael?
I don't like the Dark Knight trilogy.
I know.
Which is why you said that.
Yeah, thanks for explaining the joke.
To wind me up. I didn't like the Dark Knight before it was cool not to like the Dark Knight.
Is it cool to not like the Dark Knight?
It's definitely cool to not like the Dark Knight now. But at the time, it wasn't.
Yeah, I think that it's widely agreed by literally everyone that the Dark Knight is his worst movie.
Well, let's
can I bring up, though, that the three of us saw the Dark Knight together.
We did.
And you guys gave me a hard time for not enjoying
We'll have to edit that out.
No, I'm not editing it out. It's important that the truth is known here.
You know,
you guys.
I can believe that happened.
You know, we'll get into Batman because I think Batman's important.
There are good things about it.
There's a lot of good things about it.
It was super popular, so he did a lot of things right with that.
It's true.
But we're not talking about that yet.
No, we're not. You jumped way ahead. Now everything's off kilter. I don't know what to do.
We're gonna start over.
No, we're not. Yeah. Matt, we're not starting over.
Oh, okay.
Start at the beginning.
Okay. So before we get into Christopher Nolan and the movies he made before Batman, I wanted to talk to you guys about what you've been up to this week. Matt, have you seen anything good? Read anything good? Written anything good?
My favorite movie I saw recently, which I think I told you about, was Tangled, the Disney movie.
You told us about that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, well, it's still my favorite thing that I've seen recently.
Okay, we're talking about it again then.
Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna mention.
I liked it. I saw it. I mean, I don't have kids, but I just watched it for fun because, that's what I do. Watch children's movies.
Right. Well, me too.
But I saw it on Netflix. It was actually really good. I liked it more than most Disney movies.
Me too.
I felt like the primary female role was less like typically Disney like misogynist and demeaning. Yeah. She was like a strong central character for the most part.
Yeah. She was more of an actual character, and then I really liked the villain more also because she was like genuinely terrifying without being like she wasn't even a witch. She was just like a person who was really evil, and that was interesting.
It was good. It was really good.
Yeah. Well, I have not seen it, so I have nothing to contribute.
Yeah, well, everyone should go out and see Tangled, and then maybe some Chris Nolan movies. I don't know.
probably in that order, I think would be good. I think Tangled first, and then maybe some Chris Nolan movies.
So the last movie I saw was The Maze Runner 2, Scorch Trials.
Oh, I've heard very mixed things about that movie.
Yeah, did you see the first one?
Yeah, before you talk about the second one, tell me what you thought of the first one.
Okay,
because I liked it.
I liked the first one a lot too. Like it was, I thought. Well, I haven't read the Maze Runner books,
Me
but
neither.
like I liked it better than the Hunger Games. But I have read the Hunger Games books, so some of that might have just been like I didn't like it as good as the books, and maybe I was already expecting everything or something. But I thought the first Maze Runner movie was really good. Like it's a cool premise. Him like appearing in the middle of this kind of like utopian clade in the middle of this weird maze, and you don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. The main character is quite a good actor, actually. I think. I don't know. Anyway, it's just really exciting and well done. And it's a cool premise, and they don't explain it too much, which is good. If they actually explain everything that's going on in this series, I think it's going to ruin it, kind of like Lost. But there's a cool level of mystery, and yeah, it was just like a well done action kind of young adult movie.
I felt like they did explain too much at the end, but I agree that the movie was enjoyable. Like the end of the movie, I was like, this just became something I would have written when I was 12.
Yeah, like they didn't need to explain it the way they did, but like it's still like what the F enough that you're in. And going into the next movie, like they actually segue it into the next movie really well. Like you still don't know what's going on.
Okay.
And that they're put in another like dangerous situation right away. And like I really like the beginning of the next movie. Like they start like it's automatically really tense and full of like the same sort of mystery as the one before. And then that keeps happening like but like the plot never starts in the second movie is the problem. It suffers from second movie in trilogy that ends up being 4 movie syndrome, where
they're actually not to interrupt you, but they're only doing 3 movies with this one. They're not dividing the third book into 2 movies. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, that's excellent. I'm glad they're doing that.
I'm proud of them.
But they didn't really stray from the formula. Like I didn't feel like this one really had a ending. It was just like setting up the global conflict. Like all of these trilogies, like the first movie is pretty well self-contained usually because they have to like hook people. But then the second movie is usually just setting up like something that's going to last for some more movies.
Right.
And it's like you can't be lazy. You have to like also have a self-contained thing in the second movie that's also setting up like a grander story as well. But yeah, I was still worth seeing, I think, but there were some disappointing elements. Also, it's getting like super Christian, like symbolistic. I didn't realize that the writer was like a Mormon.
It's a YA book, right? Don't they all get super Christian symbolism?
Well,
I feel like they all have a Jesus character in it at some point.
Well, this one definitely does. And like or maybe like an Adam and Eve thing going on too. Oh. But like, yeah, no, I didn't. Like it starts to become super obvious in the second book. All of the symbolism, but
I hate the name. I hate Scorch Trials.
Scorch Trials. Yeah. It's not excellent. But I don't know. I think the movies like know what they are, and they're pretty enjoyable for what they are.
Cool. Yeah, I'm gonna give that one a shot. I think.
I'll see it on Netflix in 6 months or so.
Yeah. There's another series speaking of Netflix, which I didn't actually watch this on Netflix. I watched it on Crunchyroll, the anime streaming website.
What?
Not the Scorch Trials. The next thing I'm going to talk about. It's called Raka, the like Legend of the Six Braves or something. It's a really good anime.
Are you talking about anime on my podcast right now?
I still watch anime?
No.
Why not?
Because it's bad.
Well, Scott, hold on now.
All anime is bad.
Yeah, I can say 98% of anime is bad.
I mean, back me up on this, Matt.
I mean, Death Note, Scott.
Death
I can't watch anime.
No, but look, it's just another medium of storytelling. It's just like an animated form of storytelling that's Japanese. Like
now I have to write a Death Note review.
I won't publish it. It won't happen.
That's it. We're splitting the website now.
We're splintering. Oh God, talking about anime.
I mean, you're talking about it as if it's like some lower form of art. Like it's still.
I am.
It's cool again to like anime.
Never.
It is. Yeah. It's really in right now, Scott. You should. Have you seen Attack on Titan? Because everyone was talking about Attack on Titan like 2 years ago.
No, I have not, and I will not.
All right.
Well, you watch Death Note, though, right?
We'll have to disagree on this. Yeah, but Rocka was as an excellent like whodunit series that just came out and just finished, and I really enjoyed that a lot. So I just wanted to mention it.
How long was it? And
it's 12 episodes.
Does anything happen in half of the episodes?
Yeah.
Is it the most slow form storytelling I've ever seen in my entire life?
It probably would be slow for you. But I think it was pretty well. It's only 12 episodes, which is not long for an anime. It's not like a 200 episode like shonen thing that never ends, like Naruto. It's like a whodunit. Like someone is bad amongst the group, and like they're trying to figure out who it is. And it's got good action and good characters, and like it's quite fun. It's 12 episodes.
Okay.
All right. Well, I'll have to put the actual name of the show down in the show notes.
So I respect you and your opinion, but
should I talk about some of the other anime?
No, you should not.
Just let him talk, and you can cut it out later.
We're gonna talk about the movie that I saw recently now, which was not an anime. I saw Black Mass on Friday, the new Johnny Depp film.
Oh, that's one of them grown-up movies.
Yeah. It wasn't great, actually.
I mean, Johnny Depp is not. I don't know. He's not good.
Johnny Depp is the best part of the movie.
He's not a human, though.
That's not surprising.
He gives an amazing performance. The performance of his career, I think.
Okay.
But
so it's not just Johnny Depp like putting on weird makeup and being weird, though.
I mean, it is, but
okay.
Okay. His character has like a presence, like he's really scary, and like so he's got a bad hairline and awful looking colored contacts. They look fake, and like so the first 15 minutes of the movie you're like, this guy doesn't look like a real person, and
he's not a real person.
And then by the end of the movie, like that actually adds to it because you realize that like it makes him scarier because this is a scary freaking guy. Like that's his whole thing is like he's insane and nuts and like will kill anyone, whatever, and it adds to it. Like it makes him look otherworldly. But
that's cool. I'm glad they found a role. I mean, there is a type of role for Johnny Depp, which is exactly this. Is like some inhuman, like weird, creepy character.
Right. Well, he's got to have on like a hat and weird makeup. So the hat this time is just a weird receding hairline with slick back hair. And the weird makeup is his contacts. I think he like hates how he looks or something. So he only picks roles in which he dresses up as other things.
Maybe. I don't know. Does he pick them or is that just what he's typecast as now? People are like...
I mean, I think he can pick roles. He's famous of enough actor where he can pick and choose what he wants to be in.
Yeah, because he was famous for being like a pretty boy for most of his career. Yeah. And then he either got bored of that or something, but he
was he? I thought he was famous for Edward Scissorhands first, or
well, that's true. But
that's what, but
which is just his usual role.
Interesting point.
But he was in a lot of different movies where he just played a guy, and I think from Pirates of the Caribbean on, the only roles he picked were dress up in giant costumes. Like I don't think he's been in a normal like drama role.
Yeah, I mean, can we talk about how unsettling his Willy Wonka was?
Oh my god, that was the weirdest fucking movie I've ever seen.
Gave me like weird pedophile vibes. That movie at all.
I don't know what they were even trying to do.
I don't either.
It's insane. That movie is insane.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't even know what to say about it. It's just that.
Yeah. Like I'm just thinking about it, and I'm just stunned to silence, which makes for a great podcast.
Should we move on from one creepy guy who dresses up in makeup to another one who was in a Christopher Nolan movie? Is that a good segue if we're talking about Christopher Nolan?
No, that doesn't. That's a terrible segue.
I'm referring to Heath Ledger's Joker.
I got it.
Did you get it?
Yeah, but we've got to start at the beginning of Nolan. We can't just jump into the middle. Nolan
wouldn't have told his own story in a linear fashion, though.
That's true.
I mean, that's one of his themes.
I mean,
you wake up in this podcast.
Touche.
In someone else's podcast.
Like, how did we get here? You can't remember because we're in a dream right now.
Because we have no short-term memory. I've forgotten what we were talking about already.
Yeah, I haven't slept in 3 days.
About Memento.
Yeah, that's exactly. We were setting that up for the past 30 seconds.
Okay, well. Memento was good.
So yeah, let's talk about. So we're going to talk about Christopher Nolan. I don't know if you guys remember.
He's a director.
The director and writer. Batman, Interstellar, Inception, all those weird movies that you may or may not have seen. I don't know if you guys remember that it was about a year ago now when I first started this website. I wrote an intro to a post called Deconstructing Nolan, which I said I was going to watch every one of his films and analyze it in detail. I never did that.
You never did that?
I never did that. I wrote the intro. I watched his first movie, Following, which we're not really going to talk about here, which is a weird, small little film. It definitely falls into his standard style, which we'll talk about in a bit. But other than that, it's just a small little, like you can tell it's a first film. It's like, it's rough, it's interesting, it's short, but I didn't know really where to go with my article, so I just kind of kept putting it off. And,
okay.
It never happened, but we were talking about getting together to do this podcast, and it seemed like the perfect way to start the podcast was with Christopher Nolan, and this time we can actually finish and talk about him.
There's definitely a lot to discuss about Christopher Nolan.
There is.
It's a great topic.
There is.
Great topic.
I think I'll give Matt credit because I think he came up with it while we were recording our last practice podcast, which you listeners will never hear because it's secret.
But that was about The Martian, just to make you curious.
Yeah, which is a great book.
Which we've all already seen somehow.
I've read the book.
We saw the movie.
No, I didn't.
No, I mean, you're ruining the mystery.
Well, yes, this is going to come out in 2 days, Michael.
Okay.
Does The Martian come out in 2 days?
No, this podcast will. The Martian comes out October 3rd.
Oh, okay. Glad we cleared that up.
Yeah. So let's talk about Memento.
Okay.
Matt, I think you said this was your favorite Christopher Nolan film?
Yes, this is probably one of my favorite films.
So talk about Memento. What do you love about Memento?
Well, I think
I mean, should we summarize briefly just like what Memento was as a movie?
I can talk about what it was to me.
Yeah, I mean, run through the plot summary real quick. Hey, audience, spoilers for movies that are 16 years old.
Well, so. It's frustratingly difficult to summarize because it's told in a completely nonlinear fashion. Sure. There's one thread that moves forward interspersed with one thread that jumps back successively in time, and the reason is that the protagonist has the inability to make new memories. He only has short-term memory. So he's sort of bumbling through the whole movie, not really understanding what he just did or why he's doing what he's doing. And
which is a great way to which is a great analogy to the way it's directed, right? Because you don't the scenes are so interdispersed and out of order that you also are bumbling through the movie, not knowing what's happening.
Right. I mean, just as a very small example, a scene starts where he has a liquor bottle in his hands, and he thinks to himself, I don't feel drunk. And then he just sort of goes on with something, and then you realize the next scene sets up that scene, and you realize that he intended on using the liquor bottle as a weapon, and then he forgot that's why he had it. And it just kind of a series of things like that. But there's another layer of what's going on that doesn't come into the end, So I'm just going to kind of maybe try to open up the discussion by saying I've watched this movie so many times, and maybe this is like the first time that I was like mature enough or whatever to see certain things, but like made me realize this movie isn't just about like memory. It's really about how we all live our lives by constructing a narrative about why we're doing what we're doing and the significance of what we've done. And we tell ourselves a story, and we even tell ourselves lies to try to define who we are. And this is all this character is doing, except it's really exaggerated because you find out at the end that he's doing everything he's doing explicitly because he created a lie for himself to pursue.
That's a really cool way of saying it, I think. And it's something that I think is like common in a lot of Christopher Nolan movies, is the whole like using the style of the film to like express what the film is about, and then the film itself is about like something much more general than what it's actually about.
Yeah, I think that's like a hallmark of really good art, actually, which is why I think Christopher Nolan's worth talking about, is that it's not just like a story, it's communicating a message on like every wavelength that has available to it.
Yeah. I completely agree with your interpretation of it. I think Christopher Nolan would also agree with your interpretation because he has his characters' dialogue say exactly what we're supposed to think about the movie. Mm-hmm. I think, first of all, I love Memento. It's a great movie. I don't know if you guys can remember the first time you saw it, but the first time you saw it, it's a confusing mess, and you feel exactly like the character. The structure of the story, the style of how they set it up, mimics his experience so perfectly that it's like we're gonna spend the next 45 minutes, whatever, talking about Nolan movies. This is his best one by far, in my opinion.
Yeah, which is weird because it's like one of the first.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that, but I think it does encapsulate like a lot of what the best things about Nolan are in it.
Yeah, but like I was saying, I think, and watching it this time, I realized it more than I had in the past. It has a lot of the same problems I have with Nolan, which are he tells so much of his story just through expository dialogue, and he does it here too. I mean, it kind of works better here because, like, the way everything's structured, like we're hearing stories through Guy Pearce's character talk, but it's more than that. He talks about the themes, like he like at one point I was watching the movie and I was like, man, like it must be really hard to get over someone that you've lost when you can't remember that you've lost them. And I was like, that's a really cool theme. And then in the next scene, the character literally says that same thing almost verbatim. And it's like
yeah, I mean, I can see how you can like think of that as lazy, but like it's not like that's all he does, right? I mean, we just talked about how he sets up the theme and like the way that he directs the scenes and like the style and everything. So it's not like he's just telling you the important start in dialogue, which is the lazy way. I feel like it's more like he's hitting you over the head with the theme with every method possible. And that's what brings the film together a lot, is that like everything is really nicely woven around the theme.
Well, yeah. And I agree. I think this goes into my whole overarching, we'll see if it changes by the end of this, but I think Christopher Nolan's a really good director. I don't think he's a really good writer. I think he has really good ideas and like big picture ideas, but he needs someone else to be in there writing, in the weeds doing the writing. I think that would solve a lot of the problems of his films.
I think he's really good at writing like plots and connecting scenes together and doing things thematically, but I agree that he's probably not the best dialogue writer. I mean, especially compared to someone you would think of as a good dialogue writer, like my favorite Tarantino.
Right.
Like I think speaking of Memento, like the one thing to remember about Memento specifically is that it is extremely confusing. And the first time you see it, you're barely keeping up. Like it's not like the 100th time that I've seen it where I'm like noticing extremely tiny details of like, oh, the angle of this means that this person saw this at this point in time. It's like, no, you're just lost, and it actually helps to have somebody just tell you what's going on. But even then, I think like the very last scene, the very last scene of the movie, not the very last scene chronologically, the sort of antagonist or whatever you want to call him is just explaining everything using way too many words. And that's probably like I don't even mind the characters telling you the theme, but when they tell you the theme for literally like 10 minutes of just like monologue, that's more of an indication of bad dialogue writing, I think.
Yeah, and like I don't want to insult the man. I think the concept of this movie is so incredibly brilliant that like calling him a bad writer seems weird to me, because like this plot is incredible. Like like being able to come up with this idea and execute it in the way he did, it's near flawless. So I don't want to call him a bad writer. I think you're right. I think dialogue, he's not great, and I'm not asking for a Tarantino level of dialogue. I think this movie doesn't need that. It works
right. Yeah,
it works well on its own, but I think the exposition works more here than it does in a lot of his other films, for the reasons you said, Matt, that you're so lost, you need someone to hold your hand through this whole thing. And the only person you have is Lenny, who's the least reliable narrator in the world.
One of my soapboxes about movies and directors in general, which I think definitely applies to Nolan, and maybe someone will disagree with me and we can have a discussion, but like I feel like success ruins a lot of directors. And what I mean is, like, you know, Memento was obviously made when he was not fully established in his career as like mega can do anything he wants director of the stars, and it shows in the sense that the script is so perfectly polished. Like I mentioned, like the level of detail in that movie, and how things are shot, and the tiniest little, like the camera will show something for literally like half a second, and you realize later that was like someone's motivation for why they do something. And
right.
It's just and it's like that's you only really have the time and energy and even desire, I'm going to say, to like focus on something and just polish every detail of it when you haven't made it. When you've made it, people are like, okay, here's $100 million. You have to have this in theaters in 6 months. And if you don't, you're not going to get to make any $100 million movies.
The thing is with Nolan in particular, right, is he's always had this pattern where he does the big Hollywood movies so that he can like fund his fun projects, his like fun arty projects. So like Insomnia and the Dark Knight trilogy was stuff that like what Warner Brothers or whatever is like, here's a bunch of money, we need this movie made, and he'll be like, yeah, cool, I'll do a good job. But he uses that success to make his movies like Inception and The Prestige and Insomnia, which are all projects that he'd been thinking about. Like I think he'd been thinking about Inception for like 10 years or something.
Yeah, Inception's like his baby, and
yeah,
it does show, and we'll get to that in a bit. But I think you're right. I think when I look at The Dark Knight, I don't think he ever really liked comic book movies. I think he did that because it was offered and it was an opportunity to make some money and get his name out there. But he used that as fuel for his other stuff, and I think it shows in The Dark Knight Rises. I think he made that movie because they let him make Inception, and I think that kind of shows, and that's why I kind of really, really dislike that movie, because it seems like his heart really wasn't in it at all.
I mean, I still think he did a good job with it, and he managed to bring a new perspective to superhero movies in general.
Yeah, but it's one that I hate.
It's one that I hate too, which is why, you know, I really didn't like the movies and had a problem with it when it came out. But like the fact that it was so popular and it kind of like made the super serious tone for superheroes acceptable that like all other movies have copied to some degree since. Like, that sort of influence, has to be acknowledged.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's move towards The Dark Knight, and let's talk about the trilogy as a whole.
Okay.
Because I think it's tough to talk about unless anyone has any parting words about Memento. Incredible film. I love it more than I expected to, even with the problems that I pointed out. But
yeah, it's a great.
Yeah, no, it's just really good.
Go see it.
Okay, so Dark Knight. So let's talk about this. Michael, you hated The Dark Knight.
Yeah,
from the beginning.
I didn't enjoy watching it, even on like a reactionary level. Like while I was there, before analyzing it all, it just bothered me. But I don't feel like that is a very fair. That's more of a personal like. I would never enjoy a Batman movie. It was just not written for me. Like it's such a stupid idea. This man dressed in this bat costume, like fighting crime on a one-on-one level, is just so fucking stupid. I swear in this podcast, I feel like I need to.
Well, we can now because you've done it.
But that being said, like the fact that everyone didn't walk away from the movie with that reaction of being like, Batman is such a stupid idea, but instead being like, oh, that was cool and dark and gritty, like that he somehow turned a shitty idea like Batman into like a movie that was taken seriously.
So let's talk about that for a sec, because our culture is kind of obsessed with Batman.
It's interesting because the first Batman movie was actually dark. I think
Tim Burton
we
one.
forget that that's even I think we forget that that's like Batman because that's so old. But that's actually a great movie. In fact, I think I like that movie more than The Dark Knight.
I think I do too.
That's not even a debate. I do. The Dark Knight was confusing and didn't really. Okay, the thing that The Dark Knight had going for it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the first time that they showed the Batman training in a movie. And the superhero origin story is always the most fun part of any superhero story.
Yeah, it's like the only legitimate like arc.
Yeah, and once the Bruce Wayne turns into Batman plotline was over, it was like they couldn't figure out what to do with him, or more like Ra's al Ghul was just a really boring villain, and the plot of like microwaving the city's water to disperse hallucinogens was like something you would expect from the campy TV show.
Yeah, it felt very comic booky actually, for as much as Nolan seems to dislike comic books. Yeah.
Well, I guess it was a comic book, so I guess that's all right.
But like, so there's this whole thing that this was taken from a Frank Miller version of Batman, right? The dark, brooding, like Batman wasn't always like this. And I mean, it's fine. It's an interesting way to go with it. But I kind of agree. It had the comic booky element still. It was Batman Begins. For a while there, I said that Batman Begins was my favorite of the trilogy. And then I watched it the other day, and it's not.
Oh, sorry. I think I meant to say the Batman Begins. I was referring to Batman Begins.
We got it.
Okay.
It's kind of a messy movie. I think you're right. I think they got to the point where he was Batman, and then it was like, now what? And they didn't know what to do with it.
It's almost the same as Iron Man, because Iron Man, everyone loves Iron Man. I love Iron Man, but the best part of that movie is like the build up to him being Iron Man,
right?
And then they give him a corny villain, and it's just kind of like, fine. That's fine ending, but it's not the best part.
Yeah. So then he comes back a few years later with The Dark Knight, which is the one that made $1 billion and everyone loves and thinks is the best movie ever, and every superhero movie should strive to be that movie. I like that movie a lot, but it's a movie with a ton of problems. The plot on any kind of critical examination makes no sense at all. But it's a movie with a really great performance and a really bad performance, which is
We're talking about Christian Bale.
Yes. I dislike that movie more every time I see it because the Batman voice, every time I hear it, gets worse and worse in my head. And it's gotten to the point where I can't take anything he says seriously. And it's a shame because I didn't think his voice was that bad in the first one. And with each movie, they made it like deeper and weirder.
I mean, it is annoying, but like I guess it doesn't make or break the film, just the voice. But I think that's part of an overlying problem, which is just like the Batman character, which I think is what was like a lot of these movies were meant to be exploring. Like it was more focused on like his damaged character or whatever. Like I think that kind of fell flat. Like not just because Christian Bale's bad acting, but I just don't think it really came together. Like buying him and understanding all of his like problems and stuff. Yeah. Like it didn't really come together. And the second movie was definitely more focused. Like people cared a lot more about the Joker than him.
Right. Well, and you see, I mean, what they're trying to do in that whole thing, and I say what they're trying to do as if it was subtext, but it's not really because it's a Christopher Nolan movie that has no subtext. They're trying to show, you know, in the fight between good and evil, how do you defeat someone who doesn't play by your rules, and that's the thing that both the Batman and the Bruce Wayne characters struggle with is they have a code and a set of rules, but you're playing against someone who doesn't follow those. So that kind of helped explore who Bruce Wayne is, but then not really because they also had the Harvey Dent stuff going on.
Batman doesn't really have a code. Like he's got like a self-centered, like morally righteous thing where whatever he does is good, but he's actually like a terrible person.
Right. I think the best version of the Batman character is one who admits that he's just a crazy, unhinged dude running around in a suit.
Yeah. And that was what was supposed to be cool, or maybe was cool, maybe I'm being too critical, about the second movie, is that was the whole point of the Joker, is the Joker didn't want like anything in particular. He just wanted Batman to admit that Batman was basically like him. Right? Like he kept trying to show that they weren't so different. And that is kind of like the main interesting thing about Batman is like if Batman were to realize that he's basically a villain, which never happened. The Joker wasn't successful in his mission, but like it would have been better if he was.
Well, but see, I would almost argue that I think that's true. I think that's what he wanted to do, but I think the movie didn't set that up properly. I think the movie is much more concerned with him proving how bad everyone else is, because that's the whole climax of the film is like the Joker saying, look how bad all these people that you're trying to save are. And
he's just like they'll eat each other alive or something like that. Yeah, that's true.
The best part of the first Tim Burton Batman movie is when you actually see that Bruce Wayne is a totally unhinged person. Like there's a scene where he like challenges the Joker with like a fire poker or something in his Bruce Wayne, persona.
Yeah, I remember
and the Joker just shoots him. Yeah. And it's clear like it's clear that Bruce Wayne in that movie is self-aware of the fact that he's like insane and really, really weird and has problems and that this is why he has to be Batman, but it's an obsession for him, and he's like, yeah, it's an obsession for me and it's sort of ruining my life, but I have to keep doing it.
I can't stop. Yeah.
Yeah. This Bruce Wayne is just, I hesitate to say not a character, but you can't sympathize for him because you don't really understand why he's doing these things. Like you don't understand, like you're like, okay, yeah, your parents are dead. But I mean, okay, the Batman in the Tim Burton movies, you can understand why you couldn't just be like, hey, why don't you just donate all your money or put all your money into building infrastructure for Gotham, because that would actually solve the problems more effectively, because that Batman would be like, no, that's not the point. The point is this crazy obsession. But this Batman seems like a rational person, and it's like, well, if you're a rational person, there's no way you would decide to do this.
Right. And
That breaks down when the movie's trying to be this rational movie.
Yeah, and I think the most interesting part about the Batman story has always been Bruce Wayne, right? The person. And the first of Nolan's movies seems to want to deal with that. But after that one, they kind of get rid of that. Like they kind of give it lip service. They talk about how he really wants to retire, and that's how that's why he's supporting Harvey Dent so much. And he's like, there's going to be a time when I don't have to do this anymore. But it's never really explored very much, and it's also clearly a lie.
Yeah.
So that's Batman. I mean, I don't know how much more you want to talk about Batman. I mean,
not at all. I don't like it.
I think the general consensus, you're right on The Dark Knight as we've gone through time, with the exception of some of the crazy DC fanboys who love The Dark Knight and want every DC movie to be exactly like it. That's why they liked Man of Steel so much, which we won't talk about because it's produced by Nolan, not directed, but that's a really awful movie too. But I don't want to talk about superheroes anymore because that's not where his strength lies, I don't think.
No.
So we skipped over a movie. We skipped over The Prestige.
Which is my favorite Nolan movie ever.
So, Michael, take it away. Talk about The Prestige. Sum it up for us.
All right. So The Prestige is a movie about two kind of rival magicians in like the late 1800s. And their sort of obsession with their craft and their battle against each other. And it's just really well done. It's another example of like how he uses the style and storytelling methods of the movie to like incorporate the themes of the movie. So he starts off with Michael Caine like narrating like the three parts of a magic trick, which is like I don't remember, like the reveal and the fall or something, and then the Prestige obviously is the last one. But the main idea of it is like you show the audience something, then you make it disappear somehow, and then at the end you like reveal where it is, and then that's cool. And that's like exactly the arc of the movie and the main characters is like you're showing the characters like something happens to the characters, like for instance, the main character, what's his name?
Hugh Jackman.
The guy? No, the other guy.
Christian
the guy played Batman. Christian Bale. Thank you. His character, like one of them is killed in the movie, or he is killed in the movie, and then he appears at the end. It's exactly the Prestige, and the reveal at the end is that he was talking about like the greatest magic trick requires like ultimate sacrifice. At the beginning of the movie, they see this Chinese magician who walks all crippled and stuff, and his trick is that he disappears this fishbowl, and the magicians reveal at the very beginning like his secret is that he's actually holding the fishbowl between his legs, and so he just walks like a cripple all the time, even though he's not, like for the sake of his art. And that is what Christian Bale's character has been doing the whole time, because he's actually a pair of twins living the same life just so he can do like a transporting man trick. And so when he dies at the end, it's that one of the brothers dies so the other one can live. And it's just all comes together so great. And I love it.
But the Hugh Jackman character is kind of doing the same thing.
Exactly, yeah.
And he's kind of warping it in a more screwed up way. Like he takes I think you could write a whole article about how those two different characters, and there goes a plane. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yep.
You could write an article about how those two different characters interpret that art of sacrifice, because Hugh Jackman's character is literally killing himself every night.
Yeah.
So for those who haven't seen it, he meets with Tesla, which the fact that this movie has Tesla in it is amazing.
Played by David Bowie.
Perfect.
Yeah, it is perfect. And the magic trick works by actually making a copy of him, and the copy appears at the new location, but the original's still there. So the original drowns in a tank every night, and the copy gets to go on living.
Yeah. Which is like flipping a coin every day.
Yeah.
And there's a 50-50 chance that you're going to die if the coin flip turns up.
Yeah.
Tails.
And there's dual protagonists. So there's Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale. And yeah, they're very similar people really, but like at the very beginning, there's this whole the trick goes wrong and one of their wives dies. Hugh Jackman's wife dies.
Right.
And it's ambiguous whether it was Christian Bale's fault, but they keep like getting vengeance on each other, back like sabotaging each other's tricks in really brutal ways, like shooting off the other one's fingers and stuff. And it just escalates and escalates, and they're both completely obsessed with their art and like hating the other person. And it's just really good. The characters are excellent. Storytelling is excellent. It's an excellent movie.
It is. I did like what you said. The whole movie is basically one big magic trick, right? That's how it's constructed. That's how it's played out, and it works so well. And I think that's the theme between Memento and this. You're right. The theme is that he constructs the entire movie around the central conceit, and And when he does that, everything works really well.
And that's his whole thing, I think. I mean, I can't think of another director who consistently uses the style of the movie to incorporate like the theme so well and so consistently.
So now that we've talked about a couple of his movies, I wanted to get into some of the other similarities that we're seeing there.
Yeah.
Besides that, all his characters aren't really good people.
Yeah.
And so, like, I mean, even we didn't talk about Insomnia, we didn't talk about Following, but if you've seen those movies, you know neither of those characters are good people. Obviously, Batman's a crazy psychopath. His character in Memento is nuts. These guys really aren't good people either. They spend their lives trying to one-up and screw over each other. And
well, I don't know if you could say. So I think you should say they're like not purely good people. They're human. Yeah. They have big flaws, but they're also heroic enough that you relate to them and want them to succeed.
But see, I mean, maybe in this movie, but not really in any of the other movies. I mean,
really, like you don't go through Memento hating the main character. Like,
but you reveal by the end that he's the antagonist.
That's why it's so brilliant, though.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I'm looking at, like, you've seen all these movies. He builds characters that aren't good people, and that's my point. Like, it's not you root for him throughout Memento,
sure, okay,
but by the end
they're all
realizing,
like anti-heroes,
right,
sort of, in a way. Yeah. Okay,
like
I mean, I was just gonna say Hugh Jackman's character in The Prestige is like you would almost think he's an antagonist because he's so bloody minded, like,
right?
Like his ambition is like, I want to crush this other guy. For really vague reasons,
right?
And but yes, you are rooting for him.
Well, not vague reasons, very obvious reasons. In that he thinks this guy stole his wife and his love from him.
Yeah,
that's true.
But at the same time, I don't think Christian Bale's character is great either, because he's so willing to commit to this trick that, like, he drives his family crazy because for those who haven't seen it, he's married to a woman, and like, since he's basically swapping who's who every day, like on odd days or whatever, he doesn't want anything to do with her, and on even days he's in love with her because they're two separate people, and one of them actually is in love with her. But like, he drives everyone away from him. I mean, I wouldn't call Bale's character a good person either. So, I mean, what do you think this says about Nolan's worldview?
I just think it's an idea that really resonates with him, that he either finds really interesting, or maybe finds it in himself a little bit. Like, maybe he like thinks so hard about his pet projects like Prestige and Inception and stuff that he kind of sacrifices other things that are important to him, because they're all kind of like obsessive as well, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically like all obsessed with something other than the important people in their life, and it ends up costing the important people in their life things.
That's true. That is true. So, I mean, anything else on The Prestige? We're hitting 50 minutes here, so I want to make sure we can cover all the movies we need to. There's so much to talk about.
Keep going.
So let's talk about Inception real quick, because this, like we said, this is the one that was his pet project for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. I didn't get time to watch it again. I wish I had. I liked it the first time I saw it. I liked it the second time I saw it. I liked the ambiguous nature of it. You know, we talk about how his themes are really clear and obvious.
Again, yeah.
But the thing I wanted to use this movie to broach is we talked about how Nolan's main characters are all bad people. I want to talk about his weird thing with female characters in his movies.
Okay.
So, in Christopher Nolan movies, female characters are either the antagonist, dead, or so unimportant they don't really matter to the film at all. And, I mean, if you disagree with me, let me know and show me, but that seems to be his MO.
Definitely, like, one of the themes he seems to be really interested in is someone whose, like, wife died or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, in a like a really tragic way that probably could have been prevented and was maybe partially, like, the guy's fault. And then, like, the character has to deal with that through the theme of the movie, generally. So, Memento, he killed his wife with the insulin overdose. In
Spoiler.
I mean, this whole thing. In the Siege, you know, Hugh Jackman's wife died in the beginning because of the other character in the trick, like, might have tied the wrong knot or whatever. You never know. Inception, again, his wife died, was murdered. He was blamed for it. I don't know if he actually did it. Was that hinted at all? Or that maybe he was responsible? How did his wife die? Does anyone remember?
Well, so they went down into the lowest dream level, right?
Right.
And they came back, and she never believed that she was back, so
And
she killed herself.
Something he'd done.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
which is pretty cool. So that was also kind of his fault.
Yeah, it was his fault. He put he incepted her. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay, that is important. So it's something that he's obviously thinks is really interesting, and he's always done it from, like, the male character's perspective. You're right.
Well, so does he dislike women? that's my legitimate question here.
I mean, I think that might be reading a little bit too much into it.
Yeah, so as someone who tries to write from time to time, like, you two were both reading my work in progress. Which the main character is a woman, and it definitely takes an extra effort to write characters who are not you put into some different situation,
right?
And I think that's the thing, is, like, all of Chris Nolan's characters are him put into different situations, and he does a really great job of it. But like a really great, like, writer will almost never pick someone like themselves, and because a real writer can slip into any character's skin and will just do whatever is appropriate for the nature of the story they're trying to tell.
Well, yeah, but, like, you don't have to. Like, there's no reason to do that unless you want to, like, prove something. I mean, Christopher Nolan hasn't run out of cool ways to tell what you might argue is a very similar idea in stories. So why should he? Like, just because we all want him to prove he's better.
Right. I mean, and that's a valid point. You know, we talk a lot about increasing diversity in movies and films and stuff. And the question is always, why doesn't an established writer or director increase diversity in his film? And the correct answer to that would be, like, well, you shouldn't expect him to do that. I mean, maybe he should, but you should bring more people that are more diverse people to film. Like, see what I'm saying? Like, we shouldn't say, Christopher Nolan, you have to make a movie with a woman as the main character. No, you should just greenlight more films with women as the main character. Like, I get that argument, and I think that's you're right.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's good to make new movies with females or minorities or whatever as the main character, and that's good. But, like, Christopher Nolan is not, like, specifically to blame for this problem.
No, not at all. I wouldn't say that. I just think it's very interesting looking over his work, and you see that the role that females in it play, and wondering what he thinks about the female sex.
There's a couple counterexamples to this, which is one. Well, probably the biggest one is in his latest movie, Interstellar, where the probably most, like, objectively good and important character is a woman, and also another secondary character that's really important is a woman who's also pretty good. We're not talking about that yet. And in Inception, Ariadne, Ellen Page's character, is is not an evil character. She's
No.
probably like the good character,
but she's
you're
also
right.
not relevant to the film.
She's not
at
super
all.
important to the. But the only important character to that in that movie is Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, I'd say she's as important as any of the other male characters, except maybe his dad.
I mean, she's focused on more than the others, really, because there's some scenes with just him and with just Leonardo DiCaprio and her, because he's like training her, because she's like the prodigy architect or whatever of Dream Worlds. So she is more important than a lot of the other supporting characters, but really the whole movie is just about Leonardo DiCaprio's character anyway.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into Interstellar in a sec, but I have interesting thoughts about those female characters. But I would agree. I think I just think it like even in the Batman films, the girl ends up being the bad guy, and the third one is the twist, which I know you've never seen that, but that's what happens in that movie. The girl that Christian Bale is with ends up being the bad guy.
And Batman, like there's like in the traditional Batman comics, though, there's not an important female character, is there? They like implement Batgirl in a really offensive way.
Well, but there's the third movie has Catwoman, and it uses her so poorly. Like she doesn't matter to that film at all. And that was because she was always the strong female in Batman, and it just blows that opportunity. But anyway, the one thing I did want to touch on Inception, and the thing that Christopher Nolan does, especially now that he's making more money and getting bigger budgets for his films, his use of practical effects, I love, and that's why even though sometimes I don't like him as a filmmaker, that he's willing to use like the room spinning sequence. They built an entire room that spun on its axis so they could film that shot. So like his as he gets bigger, he refuses to go full CG and like make everything look fake.
Well,
and I think it really.
I've got some opinions on this, actually. I mean, I think it's cool if you want to do practical effects, like that's fine. And it probably helps your actors out a little bit. But I don't think there's anything wrong with CGI. Like, it's not that CGI is intrinsically bad. It's just that when CGI is done bad, it's bad. Like, it's usually more the bad physics that are put in there on purpose.
It's how it's used. But I think, like, I don't know. Like, I think, in my opinion, and I'm not a filmmaker, so I don't have to deal with the issues they deal with. If it can be done practical, I think you should do it. I think it's when you just start, we'll just fix that.
There is a lot of stuff in movies that you don't even realize is CGI.
I know.
It's like any car chase, like any city shot, like it's all CGI now.
And that's fine. I think that's fine. But I think there's, we'll get into Interstellar, but scenes when they're able to look out the window of their fake spaceship and actually see stars, as opposed to just looking at green screen. We look at Mad Max this year, which had a ton of CGI in it, but also every single car in that thing was real. Every car crash was practical. It just made the movie so much more visceral. You felt it more. So I appreciate Nolan for saying, if we can do this practical, I want to do it. Obviously, even that scene has a bunch of CGI in it.
I still think it's a little bit of like snobbery to say that, you know, it's not going to look good with CGI. It's like the good CGI you're not going to notice, so you're not going to complain about it. But
I notice a lot of bad CGI in a lot of big budget movies.
No, we all notice bad CGI. That's why everyone complains about CGI. But you never notice the like good CGI, so that you never know how when to appreciate it, because you're like.
But I don't think it's just the quality of the CG. I think it's also how and where it's used. Like, saying good CGI versus bad CGI, it's just like the quality of the special effects people. It's also the decisions on where and when they use it, to me.
Yeah, I think probably the best example for talking about this might be the first Lord of the Rings movie, because that one was this great blend of like they would do practical effects wherever possible, especially when they like had to make a character seem smaller. Mm-hmm. They would do it with like a camera trick. They wouldn't like cut them out and shrink them or whatever you would do. But then of course there are scenes where they're fighting like some obviously impossible monster, and then that's CGI, and it's just, I think that the point being that like you choose to do what's practical. You choose the right tool to make the scene look real, whatever that tool is.
And contrast that with the last Hobbit movie, which you can't argue that the CG. You can't argue that the CG is worse quality wise.
You can totally argue that the CG is worse.
No, but that's
not because they rendered things wrong, but they didn't put any effort to get physics right, and your brain noticed. Like when Legolas was jumping between rocks that were falling to like get up a bridge, it's like your brain knows that that's not how physics works. Like the rocks.
But he did that in Lord of the Rings too. See, we're saying like those movies are over a decade apart. Like the power and quality of our CG has gotten better since then. I just think it's how it's used. It's when it's used. It's where it's used, and it was used in places that weren't appropriate. They CG'd all the dwarves because they didn't feel like having dwarf actors or didn't want to spend the money or whatever.
Yeah, well, CGI people are kind of different, I think. But I'm going to send you a link to a really good short video.
Is it by showing the merits Jump of CGI. Film School? I've seen it. It's really good, and I agree with it. I do agree with it, but I'm saying that I don't hate CG. I hate when it's used improperly, and I like that there's a director out there that is paying close attention to when and where it should and should not be used.
Fair enough. We've gone derailed from Christopher Nolan, though.
Well, no, because he's the director. I appreciate when he used it. So the one more thing I'll say about Inception, then we can move on, is once again, this is a movie whose tone, style, and feel is perfectly constructed around its central conceit. The whole movie feels like a dream. Yeah. And even the moments where he's not in a dream world, where he's being chased by people, like he goes down that corridor that shrinks as it goes, like ridiculous looking architect. The whole thing's constructed, which is why there's all the people out there interpret the movie that say, "Oh, he was dreaming the whole time." And I don't know. You can debate the merits of that or not. I don't think it matters. But that's just how the film was constructed.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that your brain even goes there. Like, was it real?
Right.
Yeah, I think that's that's definitely intentional because of the very last scene with the top where it's like, okay, well, that could mean nothing. That could mean that the whole movie was a dream, or that could mean that the first part of the movie wasn't a dream, but now he's in a dream. And it's funny because most people are like, well, I have to figure out what the answer is, and it's like, well, there is no answer. The point of this movie was to put you in this state of ambiguity,
right? Yeah, right, into a dreamlike state.
Yeah,
good job, Nolan.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to his latest film and my least favorite of his movies, Interstellar.
After Batman,
actually.
No, you like Batman more?
Well, okay, so The Dark Knight Rises I probably like less than Interstellar, but Interstellar is to me his first high concept movie that just didn't work. Like we've talked about Prestige, we've talked about Inception and Memento, and I think those all worked really well. I just don't think this movie works. I just don't think it's a good movie. Not to say there's not a lot of good things in it, but
you don't think it came together?
No, I don't. I don't. Yeah. I don't think we talked about how the style of the film fits the theme. I don't think that really works here. I think he was.
Well, what the theme is a little bit is not as clear to me. No. As well.
And this movie, more than any of his other movies, has way too much exposition in it. Like way too much.
Yeah, it could have been edited a lot, I think.
And that's back to Matt's earlier point. Is this a symptom of he's a big time director now? He gets $200 to $300 million a budget of film.
Well,
just like with Stephen King, who doesn't get an editor anymore. Once you've made it, do people stop shooting down your ideas like they would have?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we can give him a pass. It's not a bad movie. It's not like the Star Wars prequels or anything. It didn't come together as well as his other ones, but I don't know if it's fair to cut someone down just because they're successful now and this movie wasn't as good as the last one, it must be because they don't care anymore because they're successful.
Yeah, I think I have mixed feelings because on the one hand, like when I finished this movie, I was actually really like pleasantly surprised because I was like, oh, yeah, he actually tried to make a real science fiction movie.
Yeah.
Like he put in all these ideas, he put in a wormhole, and he got the physics of the wormhole right and explained how a wormhole works, and it wasn't just like waving the hands and
yeah,
and glossing over things. And it's sort of for the same reason I like The Martian. It was like, no, we're going to make you actually understand the science of what's happening here. And but like, so it made me pleased in that way. But then after I had some time to think about it, I was like, yeah, okay, but the story it was telling was like simultaneously overly complicated and actually not that original. So the part of it that was sort of original, although it's not actually original because I've seen it in other science fiction books that are not popular and thus no one except me knows about them, was the idea of like the character engineering his own past. There's like a whole series of books about this where with like these aliens who like they're the antagonists against humanity, and then you realize by the end that like humanity never could have won because the aliens are just constantly sending information back in time to anyway, long story short,
it's like all time travel movies, but but they're always good.
But I don't think that payoff makes any sense when you look at the rest of the movie.
No, the whole weird string thing at the end was kind of, it didn't really work. You're right.
Well, it's not only that it didn't work. I just don't think it thematically fit with what they were trying to do with the rest of it. Like to me,
if you were to guess a theme for this movie, like what would you say it was?
I mean, I think the theme that the characters kept talking about was that love transcends time and space, and that
which is not nice.
No, it's not good. But like, okay, so let's that's fine. It's a bad theme, but let's talk about how it executed on that theme.
Okay.
And so the part, so that I'm trying to.
So okay, let me put a stab at this. At least here's the interesting thing from my perspective. That has a lot of things in common with his earlier movies. The main character, Matthew McConaughey, was like this astronaut who had this chance when he was younger to like do this great space thing, which was the first version of the like saving the world problem or something. I don't remember, but his whole struggle was that he had so much like potential as a younger astronaut, and he feels like his potential has been wasted. And now he's this farmer, and he's taking care of his family, who he loves, but he always regrets like not being able to do his astronaut thing. Mm-hmm. And then now he's given the chance to do his astronaut thing, and also with the added bonus that it'll like save the world, which is great because he wants to live up to his potential.
Which I would argue that part of it matters very little to him, I think.
I think it does. I think it matters a lot because that's like he wants to live up. He's like, I could have done great things. Now I have the chance. The world needs me. I'm the only one who can do this. And he's willing to leave his kids behind because of this like promise that it's really important, and also that he'll be able to save them and they'll be able to join him in space or whatever. But the cool thing is like, one, like at some point in the movie, he realizes that's not going to happen, partially because Michael Caine lied to him, and that was never the plan. He's not going to see his kids again, or he doesn't think he's going to. Mm-hmm. And partially because other stuff goes wrong. But like the most effective thing in that movie to me was when he goes down to that like super gravity planet where time moves faster. That had like the most unique and like real tension.
Right.
In any like sci-fi movie, because every like second that's wasted, you're like, oh my god, like the rest of the world is aging so fast, like his kids are aging so fast during this time, and you can see it in the way he acts too. Like he's just really like, he's like, oh, we're wasting so much time. He's like so frustrated when everyone's like, needs to get saved and crap, and they're wasting time.
No, yeah,
And when he comes back to the ship and he watches like all of the videos of his kids, like thinking that he's gone and he abandoned them and stuff, like that was really impactful. That was really good.
I agree. I think that part was really good. I think it goes right from that part to talking about love transcending time and space. Like, to have the characters literally saying that, that it could have been really good. It squandered its opportunity.
Yeah, it didn't come back on itself is the thing. Like, he realizes he made this mistake. Like, he wanted to, like, he abandoned his family basically for this pretense of saving the world, but he kind of starts to regret that, and then he's like, I really need to save the world now. I really need to make up for
I got to
this.
make it worth it, right?
But
and then so he sacrifices himself, but then the movie doesn't let that pay off, right? Yeah. I hate when they, like, that's my big thing in movies is when a character sacrifices themselves and then they get off with it. It, like, totally demeans the entire point of the sacrifice to me.
I agree.
If you're gonna set up a character is willing to give his life for a situation moment, let the character give their life for that situation.
Right.
Yeah. There were lots of opportunities for him to like nobly sacrifice himself to save the woman who was with him and let her go on to be the one who saved the day.
Right.
But I don't think you can do that anymore with like a big movie. I think is one of the problems. Like, it's Matthew McConaughey.
You totally can. There's lots of movies that end with the main character dying. That's still one of the most.
I think the movie he had jumped into the black hole, whatever, and it allowed. So I mean, I guess that's the. There's two different ways that I think you make the ending better, and both of them involve him being dead. You don't do any of the stuff with the fifth dimension or whatever, and you just have Anne Hathaway's character land on the planet. And it work for life, but then you have basically all of Earth dying because if he doesn't send that information back, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just didn't like this movie. It was boring.
Yeah, I didn't
like it.
If he died, it probably would have been like it didn't. The ending didn't work with him like going back and like meeting his daughter. Like,
when
that
she's
wasn't
old,
an emotional
and
scene
like,
at all.
Well, especially since it was so weird. Like, he meets his whole motivation has been her. I mean, obviously he didn't give a shit about his male kid,
right.
But his whole motivation the entire movie was her. And then he sees her for like 2 minutes, and then hops in a spaceship again because really all Matthew McConaughey wanted to do was to fly spaceships. That's it.
Yeah, I think if they had made that actually explicit, it would have been a better movie. Like, if they had made it clear that he's taking on this dangerous space mission because he's obsessed with being an astronaut, and that like saving the world is just a pretext.
Right. See, that was my argument to Michael earlier, that I don't think the saving the world part was as important to him. He just had to be an astronaut.
Well, it was important to him as a pretext. I think he had to justify it to himself.
Well, but he's lying to himself, and I think the ending shows that. But
the ending, the double reason the ending didn't work is because it's not that he abandons his daughter again to fly a spaceship. It's like it's supposed to be to save that other astronaut lady who he never really cared about that much.
Yeah, they never set that up. And see, that's my whole thing. You talked about how this movie, unlike his other ones, have like more fleshed out female characters. I don't think they are. I think we don't spend any time with Anne Hathaway's character. She's just suddenly exposition bomb talking about love and how she loved the other astronaut. She's not really a person.
We do spend a lot of time with his daughter, though.
With Murph. Yeah, but she's such a weird character too, because I don't understand her. Like, I understand the being upset with your dad for leaving you. Like, I get the abandonment issue thing. But at the same time, like, you could argue that the drama was because he didn't tell her he was going to save the world, so she's pissed off because she doesn't fully understand why he left. But then she starts working for the same program that he was working for, so she definitely knows that's why he left. And it's like
yeah, it's I think it's kind of a love-hate thing, right? Like, she's doing all this basically because she loves her father and wants to be her father, but she also like totally blames him for like not being there. And I think that was all right, but
I just never believed her as a character. I just couldn't.
You know, yeah, but she wasn't. I mean, she wasn't an example of like a character that was evil and didn't matter. Like, she was the only objectively good character who was trying really hard to save everything, and she did end up saving everything. and she was like more logical and rational than her brother, who was some idiot who wouldn't leave his farm.
Well,
and she tried to save him. And
speaking of which, that whole conflict was the worst thing I've ever seen. That she's frantically trying to figure stuff out in the house, and the conflict is her brother might come back and tell her to leave. Like that's the end of the movie.
Yeah.
The reason I'm being kind of quiet here is I'm just like, I really enjoyed this movie, and everything you're talking about is valid, but it just doesn't bother me. But this scene bothered me. Because it's like, just don't. I mean, the great thing about his other movies is that like the conflict and the tension is so perfectly woven into the story that you don't even notice. In this one, it's just like, well, we have to make this tense somehow. We can't just have a scene where Matthew McConaughey is talking to his daughter via interdimensional time travel dust, because people will be bored and confused, and now they're just confused.
Like all of the Earth stuff did fail in the tension. Like a lot of the space stuff had really good tension. Like when he was on the time trap planet, when he was on the Matt Damon planet, that was pretty cool. How Matt Damon had actually gone crazy, basically.
And when he's doing all the space maneuvers too, it's beautifully shot, beautifully parsed out. I think the real mistake the film made was even going back to Earth. I think once so McConaughey left, it should have just not shown Earth through the rest of the movie, and because I think that sells the isolationism.
Do you think in any way this was a response to criticism like yours, where he tried to have like an important female character? Because it really does seem like the movie was imagined and like constructed around Matthew McConaughey's character, and that maybe this whole Earth side story was kind of a like add in later.
I absolutely do think that it was a response to that. And so that's the funny thing is when you tell a director, you need to make more female characters, and the director says, okay, fine, and does it, and they're not good. Isn't that your fault? Like, we told the director to do something.
Well, I mean, I think that's the critical, we talked about how these characters are like, or maybe we didn't say it in these terms, but all of his other movies, most of his other movies are very tightly focused on their one male protagonist, and all the other characters, male and female, are sort of just drifting in and out of this person's life. Mm-hmm. It's very like close first person, if you will, type of storytelling. And the thing is like, so this one he tries to have two concurrent plot lines, and I can't think of any other. I'm probably wrong. I'm probably just missing something, but I can't think of any other Chris Nolan movie where there's two equally salient plot lines that really don't have much to do with each other.
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah. And there's no good movie that's like that either.
Yeah. Like, and so movies, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't even like matter that she's like female. It's just like, look, you can't. No one, almost no one can do this because you've made a mistake in constructing the story because you've constructed two parallel plot lines that barely interact.
Yeah, and like even the people who have tons of storylines, like George R. R. Martin, that only works when it does is because they're all woven around the same idea of like who's going to get the Iron Throne or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
And once that conflict is over, actually, like a lot of people feel the series kind of loses its cohesiveness and feels like more sprawling and less edited.
Yeah.
Right.
And Feast of Crows for stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to have something that holds it together.
Right. Okay, so that's all his movies. So let's conclude here with each one of you just giving like an overall what you think of Mr. Nolan.
Okay, well,
Michael, go first. Yeah,
I'll start. So, I mean, I've been defending him the whole time. I held that he's fantastic. I think the only reason that we even bring him up, like, is he as good as everyone says, is because everyone says he's really good, or like reacts to that by hating him. Like, he's not perfect, and because he's really good is the only reason we're so critical of him, of finding all of these little things that could have been better. But I just think all his movies are generally really original. They're with some exceptions, like in Interstellar, like they're usually really tightly woven, which is really pleasing. And he uses all of the avenues available to him to hold the story together: dialogue, directing, cinematography, and plot lines, and just everything. So that's my summary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I think it's probably just rank hipsterism on my part, but like if I had his filmography and I didn't know that he ever made the Batman movies, I would be like, this is like a visionary, artistic, auteur. This guy's great. This guy's perfect. This guy's my favorite director. And then like for some reason adding in the Batman movies, I'm like, yeah. It's not that it ruins him for me, obviously. But it's like, what a weird thing. What a weird series of things to throw into the middle of a career that is full of these like singular, artistic, unique little perfect movies. And that's another reason people talk about him so much, is people like just love to talk about superhero movies. It's the national pastime. So yeah, he's a great director, and he had to make some movies for money.
Yeah, I mean, it is his
job as well. I try not to hold it against him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, for me, when I originally wrote that piece back in December, I don't think I like Christopher Nolan anymore. It was very reactionary on my part. I did not like The Dark Knight Rises. I did not like Interstellar. So it was like, these last two movies this guy's made, I haven't liked at all. It got me thinking about how much I really liked his previous movies, and I just wanted to explore that. I never got to, but I did in preparation for this thing. I think he's a really talented filmmaker who's made a lot of good movies. I wish that he hadn't made the Batman films. I hope that he doesn't delve into the superhero genre anymore. I hope he keeps making his own side projects. And as much as I disliked Interstellar, and I've told Matt this before, I do appreciate that he tried to tell an original science fiction movie. Matt was talking about how like scientifically accurate all this stuff was. I'm not a scientist, so I didn't really care about that stuff. But
your brain probably appreciated the like realism of the space
but like
stuff.
so like, if we're dealing with like a finite amount of time, I would rather more time have been spent on constructing the plot than representing a black hole as what it would be in real life. But that's my own thing. I understand there's people out there that really appreciate that, so I'm not going to knock them for that. But overall, Chris Nolan is a really talented filmmaker who I think maybe needs a dialogue writer to step into his screenplays and punch them up a little bit. I wish he would try to tackle some more interesting female characters better, but if Interstellar is a preview of what happens when he does that, then just keep doing what you're doing, because it didn't really work out. But I mean, I think I was surprised at how much I enjoyed those older films. I think talking with you guys made me appreciate them even more. So I don't hate Christopher Nolan.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. Yes, this was a great discussion. Thank you for having me.
It was. We went a little long, but that's okay. We had a lot of movies to talk about.
Yeah,
so
we're pleased to have you here in our studio.
Yeah, it's a great studio. So for those of you listening at home, this is something that we're going to start doing on a weekly basis. We're not always going to pick a director and go through his entire work. We're going to talk about books sometimes, TV shows we've been watching, new movies that have come out that all of us have actually seen. We're going to try to bring different guests on each week based on schedules. And I'm glad that we got Michael on. Michael lives in the United Kingdom, so matching up times where we all could meet was difficult, but we pulled it off. And
it's a little bit difficult.
It's 7:30 in the morning on a Sunday, so as soon as this is over, I'm going back to bed. But no, so those of you listening at home, these will come out once a week. I don't think, Matt, have we decided what we're doing next week? I don't think we've figured that out yet.
We haven't talked about that.
No.
It'll be awesome.
It's going to be great. Appreciate y'all listening. We're working on getting on iTunes as well. I don't know how to do that, but I understand it's pretty easy. So, great. So, Matt, Michael, thank you guys for spending some time with me.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, buddy.
Why are you laughing as you say that?
I mean, it's just this outro is becoming long and awkward.
Well, you're just making it longer and more awkwarder.
That's all, folks.
Just cut.
Cut the tape. All right, see you guys next week.
See ya.